if you have got a very modest budget in your employee resource group and you're wondering what to spend it on, this video is for you, because it's a question that I get asked a lot actually when I've done like webinars and things like that. People say, I've got a budget of less than $5,000 or £5,000. What should I spend it on? So this is the video for you. This is ERG Strategy, the channel that gives you tips, tools, advice, techniques to help build effective, engaged employee resource groups that really make a difference in your organisation. So if that's what you're after, you're in the right place. Please do subscribe, share, like, all of those things. Let somebody else know about it. I also have a Substack, which is my monthly debrief, my monthly newsletter that summarises all of the things that are going on behind the scenes that I don't share anywhere else, not here, not on LinkedIn, etc. either. It's just kind of like what's going on in the world of ERGs. What am I hearing? So this issue of budgets, whenever I've done like webinars and Q&As and LinkedIn Lives and things like that, where people are just allowed to ask about anything in terms of ERGs, this question of what should I spend my budget on always comes up. Now, is what's really interesting, especially when I have guests on webinars and things like that, they often say, you don't try not to spend it. Like, you don't have to spend it if you don't have to spend it. And that's where I want to start. First of all, there is so much that you can do for free. Maybe I need to do a guide on this. Let me do a guide. Did I used to have a guide? No, I've got like a few old LinkedIn posts that I've done for various things, like for International Women's Day, how you can do it with zero budget. For Black History Month, here's how you do it for zero budget. For Pride Month, here's how you do it for zero budget. I mean, obviously that's not going to include attending these expensive city pride events, right? Usually those actually need their own budget. But there's so much that you can do without budget. And there's even, you can actually fundraise to raise money to do things, right? So it's not always a case of that you have to have money. And some of the most effective employee resource groups that I know, actually, they don't have massive budgets. Now, so before I start, let me caveat it by saying I do know some ERGs that have huge budgets, right? Huge budgets that often actually are managed centrally. So they're not even managed by the ERGs, probably because they're so big. And I'm not going to call out any organisations, right, that I know pretty well, but some of them. And these are the organisations where when they have speakers in, it is typically speaker budgets. I tell you what, some of these speakers, they're like 5 and 6 digits, right? These are, I'm talking about the organisations that are getting in, the Stephen Bartletts of the world, the Emma Greeds, they're getting famous people in. I tell you what, there is a massive jump. If anybody that's in like the world of speakers, or you've been involved in booking speakers or making inquiries, you will know there is a massive jump. I mean, to be honest, so let me before I go, let me just get on. Let me do speakers, right? Even though speakers were further down my list, but let me just squash that one first, right? You can get speakers for free. And you can literally get speakers that cost 6 figures. I mean, like literally $100,000, right? Probably not pounds, but definitely $100,000. Who can you get to speak for free? Well, first of all, certainly speakers that are just starting out in their career, you can get to speak for free. Now, and I'm not going into the ethics of whether you should or shouldn't pay all of your speakers. I'm not going to get into that. What I am going to say is, if you've got individuals that are very early in their speaking career and they're just looking for opportunities, absolutely they should speak for free, because if they're not experienced yet and the standard isn't necessarily where it needs to be, they probably won't even mind speaking for free. And actually they should see it as investment in their own business, right? It's almost like business development. It's marketing for them, right? So I don't have a problem with speakers speakers speaking for free if they're early on in their journey and they are really just doing it to build up their experience, to practice, all of that. If you want to give them, and then you can just like give them a gift, give them a gift voucher or, something else or some merch or whatever, right? Just as like a thank you. That is absolutely fine. I have no issue with that. Obviously, once somebody is a paid or professional speaker, then absolutely you have to be paying them. And assuming that they're not famous, right? And they're not, say, like LinkedIn famous, that's a whole nother category. If a speaker isn't famous, then you can typically pay them anywhere from $1,000 to $5,000 or pounds is what I would say is typically the norm. That's where most of them fall in between somewhere. 1,000's on the low side, 2, 3, $4,000 or pounds, it doesn't really matter, is probably around the norm. Listen, you can get people that you literally see on the TV or hear on the radio for £3,000. Like, I'm not kidding you. There's some people walking around on LinkedIn being like, I don't charge less than £10,000. Fine, you do you, right? But I'm telling you, you can get literally people off of the telly for less than £5,000, right, to speak. So that's a little bit about speakers, right? Which, if you have a modest budget, you could blow your whole budget on one speaker. That's why I don't generally recommend that ERGs are spending their budget on speakers. If you want a speaker, and especially if it's for a hero event, when I talk about hero or flagship event, I mean for you as a network, what's your one big event that everybody's going to be looking at, that everybody's expecting you to do something for? For those events, what you want to do is, yes, if you want a high profile speaker, cool, right? But what you want to do is you want to find somebody in the organization that maybe is, even if they're like, say they're a big fan of that particular speaker, or they can see the benefit of bringing that speaker in, or better still, you want to invite clients to the event. Clients and or customers, have a way of linking it to clients and or customers. And so basically now you have made it a client-facing event. Get somebody else to pay for it. I don't care who it is, get business development to pay for it, get marketing to pay for it, get somebody in operations, get that business division, get that. Just don't pay for it yourself, right? That's how you can get those big speakers for those other events. That's what I would say. Do not use your ERG budget on speakers. And I say that as somebody that is a speaker that has come into organisations and been a paid speaker. So if you want to pay me to come in, pay me to come in. But the ideal, what I'm saying is, invite clients in, make it commercial, make it commercially facing, and get somebody else to pay for it. And then you can invite me in as a speaker. Fine. Right. So what are some of the other things that I recommend? I want to start with, I've got a list here and I'm trying to decide let me start with books. And the reason why is there are two things, and I don't mean just books randomly. You can either build a bit of a library. That's one thing that you can actually do, and make it available and encourage people to read the books. And the library could be a combination of books for development, so in terms of self-development of individuals. I've been buying some books lately. Let me just show you what I've been buying. And this is because, linking to the last video that I did around mentoring schemes, I bought some resources to, I kind of like, when I'm doing training in particular, I like having physical books, right? So I bought some resources to kind of help the people that I'm training out to, the mentors, but especially the mentees, books around self-development. So the 12-week year, which actually is around planning in quarters, is incredible. Then I've got the 1% diary. This is really around personal development in terms of achieving goals, and also the new Emma Grede book, right? So here's the thing. Books either around self-development, so that's one thing that you can do. You can get some books in for development of your members, and you can borrow them, you can like loan them around, lend them around, etc. And you could potentially have a book club on some of those books. But the other books that you can do, and this is what would work in your library as well, you can have books that are, I guess, educational around the lived experience of your community. And again, you can encourage, maybe allies and people that aren't part of your ERG to loan those books and read them. And then you can also have book clubs. So it's really useful just in terms of that learning, right? That learning perspective, either in terms of people learning about themselves or about the community. So that's one thing that you can do with your budget, especially if you've got a very modest budget. If you've only got, like, say, £1,000, you're thinking, what am I going to do with £1,000 apart from buying a few patties and pakoras, right? which you don't want to just, again, you don't want to be spending all of your money on that. The food, and I'm going to come to the food as well. So you can, first of all, you can buy libraries and books or other resources, right? There's all kinds of things. This actually, linking to the mentoring, because I forgot to say this in the video about the mentoring, connection cards. I bought the Diary of a CEO connection cards, and it's something that I'm going to be recommending as resources for mentoring, the type of mentoring that is just about getting to know people and kind of, carrying the culture of the organization. I'm recommending getting to know you cards. So these are just some of the resources that you can use, that you can buy if you've got a very, very modest budget. And we're really talking about, that's like literally a couple of £100, if that, right? So if you've got a modest budget, that's something that you can do. I want to talk about the whole food thing, because I remember I was working with an organisation last year around what they were planning for Black History Month, and they were, their ERG was effectively wanting to use their budget to bring in caterers, to kind of almost like put on a bit of like a social gathering. I'm not a big fan. I feel like I'm saying that a lot today. I'm not a big fan of using your budget just to buy, like, for example, cultural foods for a celebration, because I think there are smarter ways of doing it. First of all, you either find, again, somebody else in the organisation, like a senior leader, that, maybe you bring the event out to their site and they pay for it, right? So they host it. So this senior leader, whoever's like, say, for example, the most senior individual maybe on that site, or somebody that has affinity to your ERG, maybe they host it and they just agree to fund a little bit of food out of their budget, right? So that's one way that you can do it. That means that you're not paying for it. Another way that I would recommend as well is, and this is something I'm going to be working on with a client that I've currently recently onboarded, but here's the thing: if you are in a building that is fortunate enough to have a nice canteen or restaurant that is especially if it's managed by a third party, which most workplace restaurants or canteens are now. So you've typically got somebody like, I don't know, a Sodexo or a Mighty or whoever, these big caterers that come in and provide these services. And what my suggestion is, as an ERG, rather than you spending your money on cultural foods or foods linked to religious celebrations, for example, go and speak with your facilities management team or your office manager or whoever has the relationship with that catering team, with that catering supplier, and get an agreement with them about how they are going to incorporate these other foods, other world foods, or attached to various religious celebrations or whatever. Get it factored into like the normal menu for that day or for that week, or agree a calendar with them. They will have this already, because they will probably already be doing this really, really well for other clients, right, in their organization. So you just need to basically say to them, we want to do something for X, whatever it be. Have you got any like special menus that you can use? This means that you're not, in theory, as a company, you're not paying any extra money for it, because you're just asking them to bring their experience. This is Sheryl from the future appending this video, which I've just watched, and I was like, where's the ending? But what I wanted to basically sort of like move on to in terms of what you can spend your budget on is research as one. So I know of some organisations that do some really good work in terms of partnering with, whether it's a charity or an academic institution, on really interesting pieces of research, often that link with their market or their client or their customer. And it's a fantastic way. These don't have to be really expensive, but obviously research costs money, right? When organisations do research, it costs money. So actually partnering with an organisation and sponsoring a little bit of resource and time to do the research, or sponsoring the marketing of the research. And again, if you don't have to pay for it all yourself, great. So work with somebody in your marketing team to see whether there is an advantage in you as an organisation having your name attached to this piece of research. I did a LinkedIn Live last Friday with Mark Brooks from the Centre for policy research for men and boys. You know, they are looking for organisations to partner with to sponsor new research into the field. And I also think actually research that is new, that is in new areas, you know, so gender gaps where boys and men are disadvantaged, that's a relatively new area. So it's a really interesting area that as an organisation, you can partner with them. So research is one that I think is worthwhile. Charitable events, you know, charitable events, fundraisers are absolutely fantastic. But what is it that you can do as a network? I mean, hopefully you're going to raise money, but things like paying for travel or accommodation for your network members to then get involved in the charitable events or the fundraisers is a really good way of spending a modest budget. And also, because we're talking about like linking with the not-for-profit sector in particular, schools, so going out to schools, talking to schools, going and doing things like careers fairs or mentoring for young people, etc. Really good in terms of like the pipeline, so getting a pipeline in of individual schools, colleges and universities, all of that kind of academic sector. You know, these are all potentially like low budget things, but it's a really good use of money. And actually, when you tend to link to these activities which are around kind of like doing good for society or for the planet, you know, if it's something around sustainability, you tend to actually get quite a lot of engagement from the wider organisation. So there's a really good benefit to it. So that's it. Ran over. I can't believe this part of the video got got chopped off. So hopefully some of that was useful in terms of tips of some of the things that you can do with a modest budget. Obviously, if you can do stuff for nothing or get somebody else to pay for it, that's always the goal. Hope you like this. If you found it useful, please do share, subscribe, give it a thumbs up, and I'll see you in the next one. Ciao.